Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Roshani and today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to master your emotions and build emotional intelligence, because everybody knows it's a very critical skill in the workplace, in your personal life, it doesn't matter where. It's a skill that can help you in a lot of areas of life. So I'm going to give you guys a breakdown of all of the things that I feel like are really important. I'm going to break it into like little chapters. If you haven't heard about it before, essentially emotional intelligence is your own ability to understand your emotions. So let's get started. You cannot control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond. Self-awareness. Self-awareness comes from regularly checking in with yourself to ensure that you are in a clear state of mind. I never do anything without making sure that I have my mental clarity in check first. Do this, don't lie to yourself because nobody else is around you. It's important to be honest about how you feel about certain things. You shouldn't feel shameful for expressing your emotions to yourself, because who else are you going to be able to openly express it to, like, right? And trust me, it really helps because I do this all the time. I always have little sit downs with myself. How is my body doing? How is my mind feeling today? And it's very important to me to be able to center myself because I don't really feel like I can function otherwise. So self-awareness is key, and just being aware of how I am in certain situations. This is why I stress the importance of spending time in solitude, because it's the only way that you're going to be able to tune out all of the other outside noise and focus in on how you really feel about things and recognize patterns of behavior within yourself. I literally talk to myself. I know it might sound a little bit weird to some people, but it's something that helps me ground myself. I will just like say to myself what it is that's bothering me, and then I'll try to get to the root of what it really is, and then I have so much more clarity throughout the whole week, or even just for the rest of the day, because I feel like I took something off of my shoulders. Like, it feels like there's a weight lifted off of your shoulders, right? And who doesn't want to feel lighter? That you can do to get to know yourself a little bit more and just build self-awareness in general is to journal and to do like a brain dump, if you've ever heard of it. And basically it's just taking whatever you're thinking, whatever's on your mind, and putting it on paper. This is all of my journals from the past 6 years. So I have been doing this for so long, you guys, and it helped me so much to be able to recognize my triggers and just help me notice more of my tendencies, and then I can catch it before it actually happens. Doing this might feel really uncomfortable at first. It definitely was for me, but it helped me over a long period of time. It never feels good in the moment, but then down the line, like 5 or 6 years later, you really do feel amazing, because it just feels like you're so much of a lighter person, and you're not carrying so much emotional trauma anymore, and you don't have emotional scars. So when people see you, they like feel a sense of like freshness, because you're not carrying so much around with you. Because when you interact with people, as much as you don't, even if you don't believe it, people can sense energy. Like, we are energetic beings. We can transfer energy really easily. We can tell when somebody's carrying a really big load of something, and it makes us actually want to stay further away from them. People who are healed, and they've healed their traumas, and they've worked on their inner child and things like that, sense that there's a spirit of freedom within them, which feels really nice to interact with. It's really refreshing when you interact with people like that. So this way you can recognize patterns, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to become aware of yourself. Step number 2 is to learn to self-regulate. So now that you've identified all of your triggers and all of your thought and behavior patterns, you can now start to really slow things down. So like I said before, it was a lot easier for me as years went on, because I started to see when something would unfold before it actually unfolded. I was like, okay, I see myself reacting in this way, so let me try to stop it before it can happen. I'm still working really hard on this. It's been something that was so prevalent in my life for such a long time that emotional intelligence was really my savior. Like, when I was able to become so much more aware of myself, I became just that much more comfortable in social settings, because like, I'm honestly an introvert, and it helps to know these, tips. Meditation allows you to stop reacting to things and instead respond. That's the key here, is don't react, respond. I try my best to keep this in mind, and yes, I lose sight of it a lot of times because things get really challenging, but the more I practice it, the easier it becomes. And that's why I say, like, you have to make a conscious effort. It's not just something that's going to happen naturally, because the mind is wired for comfort, right? It's just a biological thing, but don't worry. You can rewire your brain. I know it's annoying to hear. You're like, ugh, snooze fest, but meditation really helps. I've been meditating for a few years now, and it's completely changed my my brain structure, if that makes sense. Like, I swear it's made me a new person, because it's just made me hyper aware of who I am, that I no longer make decisions, or at least I try not to make decisions that I feel like won't serve me. And I talked about this before too, is like, don't make decisions that don't serve your higher self or your most ideal self, because obviously the goal is to get to being that person. When you don't make decisions consciously, you're going to, like, you're not moving forward, you're going backward. It just feels like the finish line is so far away. Obviously, when it comes to self-development, there is no finish line that you cross where someone deems you like self-aware. It's a lifelong journey. It's something that, you know, you're constantly having to learn and evolve from. You should be setting aside time for problem solving. Make sure that you have time in your day to figure out, like, you don't necessarily have to deal with the problem when it comes to you in that moment. You can always just set it aside and then find another time to deal with it. That's usually what I do. It's like, if I have a lot of things to do, obviously I can't actually deal with all of my emotions all at once because I don't have the time for it, right? But if I set aside a certain time to deal with it and ask myself, okay, what was it that I feel like set me off in this moment, and what can I do about it next time, or what can I do to fix it? And in that way, it's so much more organized. You don't feel like you're carrying a load on you, and you can also be so much more productive. You prevent yourself from falling into the trap over and over and over. And if you practice even more, eventually it becomes like second nature to you, so you don't even really have to think about it the next time that you try to do it. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Start with 5 minutes and then work your way up. I will link a few of my favorite meditations down below. I used to use Headspace for a little while, and then I do like YouTube meditations sometimes if you guys are interested. But yeah. All right, number 3, let's talk social intelligence. This is a big one, okay? Because sometimes, okay, I do this a lot when it comes to my social intelligence. In order for me to develop it, one thing I really like to do is people watch, which might sound a little bit weird if you've never done it before, but like sometimes I will go to a restaurant that I really like by myself, and I will order some food, maybe buy myself a drink, and then I will watch other people, and I see really interesting interactions. I'm not staring at them, obviously. I don't want it to sound creepy, but I'm observing, right? I'm just observing people. Social intelligence comes from learning to catch the mood of the room. I feel like not a lot of people know how to do this. You guys, I don't want to be the person that says something in the moment that it was not supposed to be said, where something was not supposed to be said. I don't want any of that foolishness. I don't know who would want to be in that position. I feel like that's one of the worst positions to be in, is if you're not socially aware of what's going on. So just learn to catch the mood of the room. This is like, I'm talking about the ambiance, I'm talking about the aura, the general energy that most people are carrying. And when you start to become more self-aware, you also become very intuitive, so you start to be able to pick up on things like that when you step into a room. Social intelligence also has a lot to do with like little things, like, do you greet people by name? Do you observe body language? Do you practice the art of listening? This is a really big one, like I talked about in, I don't remember which video it was, maybe it was my first video, but like most people don't really know how to listen, effectively listen to somebody. They're hearing somebody, but they don't actually know how to listen. And there's a huge difference between the two, believe me. And it's like, you will have time and you will have the opportunity to talk about yourself, but those moments will come in the moment that it's meant to come. Don't try to infringe like every single time when someone's trying to talk to you and you can't catch the vibe that this person thinks you're talking too much of yourself. Like I said before, it's unattractive, so don't do it. If you guys want to be a clown, be a clown. But for me personally, I'll be damned if I'm ever in a position where I feel like I said something in a moment that I was not supposed to say it, just because I was not willing to take at least just 5 seconds of thinking to myself, okay, Roshani, was this smart? Is it smart to say this, or was this a stupid idea? You know what I mean? Just learn to be a little bit more aware in that sense. And trust me, it's a very attractive quality. It makes you a wholesome person, like yada, yada, yada. I already explained this, blah, blah, blah. So learn to catch the mood of the room. Catching the mood of the room is a very effective strategy when it comes to social intelligence, because it's like, then you start to get a little bit of an idea of how people are and what they like and what they don't like, if you really are carefully watching, you know. But don't make it obvious. Don't make it obvious, okay? Just don't do that, because then people are gonna think you're weird, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if they think you're weird. If anything, if they think you're weird, that's a good thing. I'm just rambling now. Back to my point. So that is basically a little bit of a quick breakdown. But honestly, emotional intelligence has a lot to do with you kind of recognizing who you are as a person. I found that the more that I went on my journey with myself and I started to find myself more, it was just so much easier to be emotionally intelligent. I didn't have to like try super hard to do it. It just came to me naturally, because I feel like when you're on a self-development journey, you have to be aware of yourself anyway, and there's a lot of practices that you have to put into play that you wouldn't normally do, which I feel like can be applied to building your emotional intelligence to begin with. Oh my god, it's hot. It is hot in here. By the way, you guys have been asking me to upload like more makeup tutorials and hair tutorials and things like that, and I really want to get to it, but I tried to film a makeup tutorial twice. The first time I filmed it in slow motion, and the second time the lighting was just completely off because I was going out that night, so the lighting was super dim and I just didn't like it. It was nighttime and I was rushing, so I don't want to give you guys a rushed video, you know what I mean? This was the first book that I ever read in the self-development genre. I read this 6 years ago. It's been quite a while. I have read it so many times since, and I think when I first read it, I would carry it around with me in my bag because I was like, I need to keep in mind all of these tactics. But if you guys want to know more about emotional intelligence, I would really recommend reading this book because it has like a full breakdown. All of the points that I made are in reference to this book because it's so good. And honestly, I've started reading it even before I started filming this video. I was like, okay, I should bring this into my video and I should recommend it. But then I started reading it and I literally got caught in the midst of it because it's so good. But yeah, a big part of emotional intelligence as well is just being able to control your self-talk. Sometimes the way that we speak to ourselves is quite limiting and it can be very self-defeating and make us make decisions that don't benefit us and don't benefit any of our loved ones. And I've gone through this cycle before and I know it very well. So if you're caught in this cycle, just know that there is a way out. You just have to make the conscious effort. Like I said, nothing comes easy, nothing good, and nothing worth having comes that easy. Everything that is worth having takes a long time to build, and my relationship with myself has gotten really, really good as of this year. But this is the first year I really feel like it's gone to a level where it feels very, very deep for me. Another practice I love to do, which is also mentioned in the book, is like when I'm watching movies, I watch for people's EQ. Like I watch to see which characters are most emotionally intelligent, which characters are not necessarily driven by their emotions, but they can return back to a place of logic. And there's a lot of characters. I can't think of one at the top of my head right now, but there's so many characters I've seen that I'm like, wow, this is a good representation of what it means to be someone who's very emotionally intelligent. IQ is something that doesn't change. I'm not sure if that's true. I read it in a few books before, but IQ is not something that changes. When it comes to EQ, it's something that can be changed. And I know this because I took an EQ test like a couple years ago and I scored pretty low, and recently I took another EQ test and I did way better. So I've been working really hard on trying to make sure that I try to sustain that and try to make that better. But obviously by the end of my life, I want to be very emotionally intelligent so I can make like good decisions for myself, you know what I mean? So yeah, you just have to understand the rules of the culture game. Sometimes it's just so beyond our awareness because we're not thinking about that. We're thinking about ourselves usually, and the way we are, which is good to a certain extent because that's where self-awareness comes from, right? You're watching yourself. But at the same time, you have to kind of tie that into what's happening around you and how that's going to fit and how that's going to go hand in hand. And when you care, show it. I don't know why, like I mentioned this before, like everyone preaches like the stoic way of being where like I'm not affected by anything and nothing bothers me, but why pretend like that's true when all of us know what it is that we go through and what we actually feel when nobody else is around? There's no point. Like it's pretty pointless when you think about it. I understand like nobody wants to look vulnerable in the eyes of other people, but what's so bad about it? Like what's so bad about looking so vulnerable? At the end of the day, if you see yourself equal to everybody else, you're inevitably vulnerable. Like you're always going to be vulnerable because you're going to be like, what am I compared to you? We're both the same, right? When you are in public and you feel like you want to say something, you feel like something's relevant, just make sure that you understand that timing is everything. And the time that you say something and the context that you say it in and where you are, all of those things matter. So take that into account before you say, I don't want to be the one to do it. I don't know about you, but if you don't want to be the one to do it, then listen to my advice, okay? Effective emotional intelligence comes from having a balance between emotion versus reason. So you're not entirely logical to the point is where like you're a robot and you never feel any of your emotions because you will bottle up and one day you're gonna explode, trust me, or it's gonna come out in your body. All right, there's a book called When the Body Says No. So it's basically about like when you don't want to say no, have boundaries, right? Because when you don't want to say no, your body will say no, and that will come out in illness and disease and sickness, and you don't want that in the future. And as much as you might think it's an external cause, usually it's not, because everything starts from here. Please remember, there's got to be a balance between the both, and especially with emotion, your emotions will create trouble if you're not aware of them and if you don't see how they impact you and how they impact other people. Obviously, sometimes you're gonna have those moments when it just feels like you cannot control yourself because for some reason something just doesn't feel right, and maybe you just let it go on for too long. And I've been there many times myself before, but at the end of the day, it's like if you have the strongest support system, people will love you regardless. Like if you have people who actually stand by your side during those moments when you are that low, then that's when you know that you've selected the right group. Without a solid support system, how are you going to be able to reach any of your goals, right? It's like working out is a great recharge for your body. You need to find a mental recharge. For me, that's reading and journaling and meditation, as well as yoga, just like different forms of therapy. If you don't want to sit in a chair and talk to someone, fine, but find other ways to be able to cope with things, because I promise you, you'll make a better impact by the end of your life if you focus on these things first. Finally, accept that change is always just right around the corner. Everything in life is temporary, and I think like the faster I started to accept that, the faster it was easier for me to just go live my life, because I was like, you know what, at this point I can't do anything about it. Like I said, you can control yourself, you cannot control anything else. So focus on that and try your best to keep your focus on that, and then worry about everything else later, okay? Living a happy life, and whatever that means for you, try to make that happen to the best of your abilities. Anyways, I'm gonna wrap up this video now. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys want to see more of. Again, thank you so much for being back here if you are returning, and I will see you guys in the next one.